Welcome back. Thank you for remaining with us. We were still talking about the Umeme stock here before we went into that very quick break. And we saw that this particular stock is one of those that are very, very interesting to see that in terms of year-to-date performance, it's very, very good. And in terms of the recent performance, we see it coming down a little bit, as we see its performance here. But let's look at the figures now, because we cannot talk about the stock market without the figures. The current pricing is 200 Ugandan shillings, and Umeme on its last trading day lost by about 1%. That's 0.99%, but almost 1% drop from its previous day of trading at 202 Ugandan shillings. Umeme began the year with a pricing of 189 Ugandan shillings, and it has since gained a value of 5.82% on that price valuation, ranking it the fourth on the Uganda Securities Exchange in terms of year-to-date performance. Investors should, however, take caution that Umeme has recently witnessed a poor performance by losing 17% of its value in the last 4 weeks. So just 4 weeks ago, as we have seen on the graphs, we see a loss of over 17%. Umeme is the second most traded stock. However, as you can see, those fluctuations are not just due to movement. Since it's a domestic company here in Uganda, we see that the stock movements are attributable to the trading, as this is the second most traded owned stock on the Uganda Security Exchange over the past 3 months. That is from April 7th to July 19th, 2022. Umeme has traded a total volume of 35.5 million shares, each valued at, of course, the shares have been valued at 8.52 billion over the period of just 3 months. And with an average of 563,190 shares traded per session. The highest volume was 7.44 million over this period of 3 months. And this is from April, we're talking about April 7th to July 19th. And the volume high of 7.44 million was achieved on 20th of May 2022 during the same period. And we can see activity. Looking into yesterday, Umeme traded 1,900 shares. Looking into the 18th, the day before, we see 2,315 shares. And then on another day, we see 20,000 shares, and so on and so forth. Meaning we see activity of Umeme on this particular exchange here in Uganda. And investability, yes, very investable, very liquid stock. You see counters that are giving you liquidity are also something that indicate good performance. And Umeme Limited has proved that. And right now, like I've told you, as you see those prices go down, you can even wait further, maybe for them to go down further a little bit, but this is a time to buy Umeme stock. If you have eyes, please open them and see that this is an opportunity. And you can buy over 1,000 shares at 200,000. You can buy 10 shares at 2,000. You can buy 100 shares at 20,000 right now on the stock market. I'm telling you, you can find buyers because this is a stock that has really proved to be very, very attractive when it comes to trading on the Uganda Security Exchange, given the activity that we see around this stock. Now, these are not the only stock or equities that are on the market. We had other counters on the market that traded, and let's have now a look at some of these stocks. We see on the stock market, we had Bank of Baroda trading at 85 Ugandan shillings, and there was no volume that was traded. And we see British American Tobacco at 15,000 and also trading no volume there. We see Centrum Investment Company at 317.88, who came out as a gainer with a 1.39 Uganda shillings gain in price. And then we see that he traded 100,000 shares yesterday. Cipla Quality Chemicals at 70 cents, did not trade any volume. 550 Ugandan shillings of DFCU Bank also did not trade any volumes. And then East African Breweries at that 4,461 did not also trade any volumes as well, but was among the gainers. And Equity Bank, as we have seen, was among the gainers. Jubilee Holdings also came there in the green, as you can see on that screen. And then we see Kenya Airways as well coming out in the green, but no volume traded, and KCB Bank as well. Moving on to MTN. MTN gained by 0.14 to return to the 190 shillings mark after a trade of 614,541 shares. So MTN Uganda is also doing quite well compared to other counters. And if you are looking also into a liquid market, MTN, I think, is a good counter to consider because we see volumes traded almost every day as well. The National Insurance Corporation came in at 6.0, and there was a volume of 71,300 shares traded. Then Nation Media Group at 607.62 Ugandan shillings, that had no volume traded. New Vision Printing and Publishing Company at 155 also did not trade any volumes, and neither was there any movements in price. Stanbic Bank at 20.50 came as a non-gainer, non-loser, no activity as well. Uganda Clays Limited at 19 cents traded over 237,100 shares. Womeme came in at 200 shillings after a loss of 2 Ugandan shillings to come at the end of the day with over 1,900 shares traded. At the end of this trading session on the Uganda Securities Exchange, a total of 1 million shares, 24,841 shares were traded, corresponding to a market value of 151,074,940. So we are seeing over 150 million trading worth of money. And we see, compared with the previous day, that was on Monday, the data shows a 65% decline in volume, 64% decline in turnover as well. The current market capitalization of the Uganda Securities Exchange is down to now 21.4 trillion Ugandan shillings. In aggregate, five equities that are listed participated in trading, and we had 8 gainers and only one loser, Umeme. The gainers were led by equity, like we have already seen, at a 0.44% appreciation in price. Then regarding the performance of the indices, we see that the index, the benchmark index, USE All-Share Index, went up by 0.29%, closing with prices of 1246. And we see that that came out, of course, with a 1,246 points, closing that index there of the Uganda Securities Exchange. At the local company index, we see that the points did not change from 277.31, but we see weekly, monthly, and year-to-date losses for the local companies here in Uganda. Now, that's it for the Uganda Securities Exchange. We cross over to Kenya, Nairobi, right now, looking into the performance of this particular stock market. You know that this is the largest stock market in East Africa by size, but also by turnover and also by activity. It is the most active market. Compared, of course, we have a couple of exchanges here, the Dar es Salaam Exchange, the USE, we have the Nairobi and the Rwanda Stock Exchange. Now, of the 4 stock exchanges, the Nairobi stands out as the largest. Now, looking at the end of the day's trading yesterday, we see that the Nairobi Stock Exchange came out at the end of the trading day with over 5 8.1 million shares traded in over 960 44 Nairobi Stock Exchange listed equities out of the 65 participated in the trading, and they ended the day with 13 gainers and over 22 losers. And we see that the East African cables led the gainers on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, and we see some of the gainers here and the bottom losers, but we see that the gaining actually didn't have much to see, but we see 22 counters losing on this particular stock here in Nairobi. Now, the other gainer was Stanbic Holding, who came out at a 4.7% increase in price, and Longhorn Publishers, who came out at 4.05% gain, as well as Kenya Reinsurance Corporation at a 2.99% gain. At the losing side, we had actually Total Kenya, who came out last with an end of day trading depreciation of about 4.31%, and at Kenya shillings 22.2, while Britam Holdings also was a loser at 4.15 depreciation, and Stanley Fahari Income was also another loser at 3.9% depreciation, and Safaricom also lost at 3.67%. Safaricom, however, recorded the highest volume of over 2.68 million traded shares, followed by KCB Group at 394,500 shares, while Kenya Power and Lighting Company came in at 330,900 shares, and Equity Group Holdings at 266,700 shares. Regarding the performance of the index, the benchmark index known as the All-Share Index of Nairobi came in at a gain. We see that at a loss of 3.14 points, which is a 2.27% drop in points, to close at 135.38 points, which is a one-week loss of over 2.2% and a four-week loss gain of 11.33%. Now, let's look into the East African Cables, which is the top gainer on the market. The East African Cables Company came out on top of the Nairobi market. And now, East African Cables Limited is a Kenya-based company engaged in manufacture and sale of electrical cables and conductors, and its products range from copper cables, aluminium conductors, fiber optic fibers, cables, as well as telecommunications and data cables and related accessories. The company's products are manufactured cables for application in domestic and industrial lighting, as well as transmission and distribution of electricity. The company has 4 manufacturing facilities, 2 in Nairobi and 1 in Dar es Salaam, and 1 in the Eastern DRC. It has a network of agencies and a couple of branches around East Africa. East African Cables is listed on the NSE under the ticker symbol CABL, as you can see there on the market. In terms of valuable stocks, it is the 54th most valuable stock out of the 65 stocks that are listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and it has a capitalization of over 253 million Kenyan shillings, which is about 0.012% of the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Looking into the history of this company, we see that we're based on this graph here. It has quite stable performances. If you can see, averages of over 1.5. Just yesterday, we see that the company went up by 5% from 1.0 to 1.005, actually 1.05 Kenyan shillings. Now you can see on the graph here that Roughly still the company has gone down based on the performance of the last 10 months. If you look back in September 2021, the prices were as high as 1.5 averages, and we see those coming down to 1.25, then down to 1.0, as you can see on the graph. But just yesterday, we see the company bouncing back from 1.0 to 1.005. In terms of the trading results, when you look into the last trading results, the opening prices for this particular stock was 1.05, and the day's low price was also 1.05, as well as the day's high price of 1.05. And they traded volumes of 100 shares, and the number of deals recorded were 1, while the gross turnover was 105 Kenyan shillings. Now, the earnings per share were 1.92 Kenyan shillings, and the price to earnings ratio was 0.52 there. They have 253 million outstanding shares, and these account actually 253 million shares, accounting for a market capitalization of 253 million because of that 1 Kenyan shillings price. Now, let's look into the performance of this stock for the last couple of days. We see that on the 19th of July, there was a volume of 85,400 shares that was traded. And then we see that the closing price for that day was 1.0. And that was after a change of 0.05. But I think this is supposed to be 1.05 and not 1.00. We see that this gained by 0.05 from 1.0 to 1.05. That was a percentage change of 5.26%. The day before, we see volumes of 115,800 that traded, but we see that there was a loss of 0.1 shillings. Closing price was 0.95. So on average, we see a total gain in the last 2 days in this particular stock. And 16,900 shares were traded on the 15th of July, as you can see here. And we see that we ended with a price of 1.05, where we are back right now as the close of the markets yesterday. And we see that there was no change on that particular day, neither was there any percentage change on that day. So looking at the performance, we can see it's an active market, and we see the buyers, we see sellers, we see going green and red, meaning the prices keep changing, and it's an attractive stock. Like I said, you don't have to limit yourself as an investor. You can limit yourself, but it's not something you have to do. If you feel like you can invest in some of these stocks in Nairobi, from Nairobi, a stock exchange, the stockbrokers can help you do just that. These stockbrokers, including Dyer and Blair, the SBG, that is Standard Bank Group, and the like, can give you help on how to trade on these particular stocks there. Now, moving away from Equity Bank Limited, we see a couple of other losers here. Wumeme, who came out as a loser also on, remember Wumeme is also cross-listed from Uganda Securities Exchange to Nairobi Securities Exchange at a 0.82% loss, came out at the end of the day with 7.3 Ugandan shillings worth of shares. And now that gives you a little bit of a picture of what transpired there on the Kenyan market. But regarding the summary of this trading day, we see that the market closed with about 5.1 million shares being traded in 969 deals that were done. Remember, a deal is when you find exactly the person selling at a price you want to buy. When you do that, you have a deal. And before 2015 in Uganda, that was done at the trading floor on the Uganda Securities Exchange by stockbrokers, of course, representing their several different clients. And you'd have people screaming all over the place, coming up with figures, and you have this trading manager on the floor who is choosing who to actually listen to, depending on who shouts loudest. But now the systems have changed. You can do this online. You don't have to crack deals with noise and so on. You can do it on your mobile phone. And also Altix there comes in handy. But still back to this trading summary, we see that this 969 deals and 5.1 million shares correspond to a market value of 124 million Kenyan shillings that were traded. Compared with the previous day of trading at the Nairobi Securities Exchange, we see that the data shows a 53% decline in volume, a 68% decline in turnover, and a 4% decline in deals. And the current market capitalization of NSE is 2.11 trillion. And that is exactly what we have. And now moving away from the Nairobi Stock Exchange, we look into one of the top stories here, of course, coming in today morning. Now, what next for the euro after slumping against the United States dollar? The euro's plunge against the United States dollar, triggered by the Ukraine war and mounting risk to the European Union economy, has driven the two currencies to parity for the first time in 2 decades. The European single currency sunk to 0.9952 US dollars on Thursday, at a level not seen since the end of 2002, the year it was officially introduced. But traders believe that the euro could recover provided it clears several hurdles in the coming months. The first to get over is to avoid the risk of a halt in Russian gas supplies to Europe, which would cause electricity prices to soar and force Eurozone countries to limit some industrial activity. If gas flows from Russia normalize or at least stop falling following the end of the Nord Stream 1 maintenance shutdown next week, this should somewhat decrease market fears of an imminent gas crisis in Europe, according to Esther Richelt, who is an analyst from Commerce Bank, according to AFP. And with the Russian gas giant Gazprom having warned it cannot guarantee that the pipeline will function properly, European countries fear that Moscow will use a technical reason to permanently halt deliveries and put pressure on them. And French President Emmanuel Macron even said on Thursday that Russia was using energy as a weapon of war. And of course, there was a fear that this could be one of the reasons why we are seeing the euro go down. But it also has to worry about a possible fragmentation of the debt market with large differences in the borrowing rates across the eurozone. And ECB has so far maintained an ultra-loose monetary policy to support the economy, while the US Federal Reserve has instead raised the rate and promises to continue to do so to counter the inflation. It will announce its monetary policy decision this Thursday and has indicated that it will raise rates for the first time in 11 years. And definitely this and more of this can be found definitely on the news. But we see the euro coming down against the dollar. Even here in Uganda, you can tell that the euro has gone down, definitely due to the factors that have been mentioned out, like the Russia-Ukrainian war, and also the lack of interest, in the European Central Bank increasing the rates, given the fact that banks like the Federal Reserve Bank of United States have already done so. And so to follow up more on that story, you can also visit our website at www.smart24.com to catch more of that fire. That was one of the stories we had, but thank you very much for being with us and staying with us since the beginning of the show. Now, if you missed the show with John Were, who was the Uganda Security Exchange Relations Officer, who talked about the basics of investment. Today is the day you're going to have to get back to that. So we're going to give you that interview, and you will be able to see how can I trade. Like many of you asked questions, and he was able to kind of educate people, even given in the local language, to see that people understand how these markets work. So if you have been asking questions, stick around, and we'll give you that interview. For now, thank you very much for remaining with us. See you tomorrow. Have a good day.